Welcome to Bare Bones. With your hosts, Dr. Mason West.
Welcome in, Bears fans, to this episode of Bare Bones. My name, as always, is Mason West, and I'm joined today, assistant editor for the Bears Wire, co-host for Bear Down Shy Pod, vaunted saxophone player, Brendan Sugrue. Brendan, how you doing?
What's up, Mason? Happy Halloween. It is a great, I think it's apropos because it's a scary time for the Bears, but yeah, I could see that you at least are kind of celebrating Halloween with like the Mickey Mouse ears. I got nothing. I just, I gotta tell you, we at my day job, we had a half day today, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try to play some golf. Like, it's Halloween, nobody's gonna be out there, and there's like 45-mile-an-hour winds, and I literally like went up to the first tee. I paid and everything. I shanked one ball that just completely like went sideways, and I said, "Nope, I'm done. Got a rain check," and I went home. Like, this
At
is
least
dumb.
you're the smart one who knows when to fold it. A lot of people would be out there trying to force it in the winds with the funkiness that's going on. No, you said, you know what? This is it. This is a sign. I'm done.
Yeah, I told myself, I'm like, I'm kind of miserable already. It's not going to get better. It's just not. So I might as well save it for another day. But yeah, it's man, it's been a week already,
It has been a week, and like you said, maybe the golf game wasn't going to get better, but we're hoping that this Bears season might, and we're hoping this Cardinals game can be a part of that. So we're going to dive into discussing some of the news from this week and leading into what we should be looking for in this Cardinals game. Earlier this week, you heard potentially Arizona head coach Jonathan Gannon talking about his relationship with Matt Eberflus, who he referred to as Flu, not my favorite name, but whatever, saying that he has elite leadership skills. Gannon also specifically mentioned how Matt Eberflus holds his players accountable. Gannon was Eberflus's DB's coach for 3 years in Indy. Kind of interesting considering the conversation of accountability that's been going around this last week in Bears Nation.
Yeah, and look, things are different when it comes to a defensive coordinator just managing half the team instead of like a head coach. I do think for as potentially dysfunctional as the Colts have been, Frank Reich had some pretty good years when Eberflus was there. They went to the playoffs a few times. They had I'd say a relatively good coaching staff and front office, at least, at least in comparison to other teams. So to me, that just tells me that, like, hey, this is a guy that has his old coaches back. They have some history. They're probably friends. But the word accountability has been thrown around so much this week, whether it's Bears fans wanting more accountability from the coaching staff, and then to hear Gannon just say he does hold his players accountable. That did strike a chord. So maybe he is going to bat and saying, hey, it's not all the coaching staff. You guys have to execute. And he does do a good job of making sure guys are in the right spots, but you'd be hard pressed to know it after this past week.
Yeah, it's tough. It definitely has a vibe of just one of those weeks where the scale could tip either way, depending on how this week goes. We'll get into the specifics of it, but you're kind of lucky that at least it's a Cardinals game. And I mean, imagine what this week would look like if it was like the Packers. Now all of a sudden, oh my God, like this could go a pretty terrible way just in terms of the importance of it, but also the likelihood of pulling out a victory too. But, we talk about accountability and talk about what the players have felt. Caleb Williams refers to something he heard years ago and believes that okay teams, nobody leads, good teams, coaches leading, great teams, the players lead. That's exactly what I want to hear from my franchise quarterback. And, especially coming off from a guy who did not play his best football for about 3.5 quarters.
It's so incredible that a rookie quarterback just in his 8th game, yeah, this is going to be his 8th game. He's so articulate. He's so well spoken. He's a great leader. We knew all of these things, especially after he had his first initial press conferences. But man, to hear it like during times of adversity too, and talking about how he could have played better and he could have put his team in a much better position going into that final sequence. Like it's huge. And it's the contrast between hearing what he's saying and then what the coaching staff, not only Eberflus, but also Shane Waldron earlier this week, it's crazy. I just don't understand. And maybe it's a little bit easier said than done. Like, you don't want to like just openly say I'm wrong all the time, or, I did this wrong, I did that wrong. But it's crazy how many times like these players, especially these players in the locker room, have talked about how each individual one of them could have done their job better to give the team a better chance of winning. And it took maybe 3 or 4 times for Matt Eberflus to finally say, well, yeah, the buck stops with me, I guess, but we still gotta execute better, as he likes to say. But yeah, I thought that was a very interesting and pointed quote. And I don't think he's wrong at all. Like, you do want to have player-led teams, a strong locker room that can be able to help basically lead themselves. But you do also need that strong coaching staff to put them in the best positions to succeed too. So he's not wrong. It was a great quote. You just wish the coaching staff would kind of, maybe show a little bit more humility as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm paraphrasing this, but, this goes back to last year where there's the play in the Browns game where you had Justin Jones guarding David Njoku. And when some of the defense was asked about it afterwards, they said, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, the call is the call, and we're going to execute what the call is. And so, like you said, the coaching staff has to put them in the right position. Not everyone can be, let's say on offense, Aaron Rodgers giving the middle finger to the sideline, or Jay Cutler, even at times when he was known to do that and saying, we're going to run something different. You're executing, whether it's defensively or offensively, what you're given. And if you do not set up your team for success, you need to take ownership of that. I mean, I think we've all been in a situation, whether it's a coach, a teacher, a boss, some superior in some way, where either we've wanted them to take some onus on themselves, or maybe we've been lucky enough that they actually have, and how rewarding that is when you actually, and gratifying that is when it's like, I appreciate you, stepping up and saying that you have some ownership of this. Now let's move forward and try to improve this. And like you said, it took forever to get there with Eberflus. Someone else who didn't take some ownership, at least I felt, was Shane Waldron. So when he talked about the play call to hand it to Doug Kramer at the goal line, he says that he felt confident in that moment in the call, but it didn't work out. It was a clean handoff, but he said he doesn't regret the call, noting his confidence in the moment. Can't you still be confident in the moment and look back and say, maybe I shouldn't have called that, or I wouldn't call that again in that particular instance?
Dude, this is Jay Cutler going after D'Angelo Hall back in 2010 to say, I'll throw it at him again. I'll throw it at him all the time, even though he picked him off 4 times in a game. There's a special arrogance when it comes to NFL coaches. And I think we all have to sort of accept that. It's what makes them so good at what they do. I think it's needed. It's kind of what a quarterback is when you're talking about confidence mixed in with arrogance. But at the same time, there is. Oh, I lost you for a second.
Yeah, it's a little bit in and out right now.
You still? Are we there? We good?
I hear you.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah,
we're good.
I don't know what's going on right now. But anyway, there's a time and a place for what that decision should be. And you can call it earlier in the game. You can call it, maybe first quarter, you're down by 3. But there's something about, obviously, the fourth quarter situation being down when you haven't generated any offense. Like, the confidence to call it at one point in the game versus another. Like, that's the thing. You can say, I believe in the play call and I believe in the player, because I'm sure he's trying to stick up for Kramer as well. But to say I will still have the confidence to call it in that exact situation, like, take a step back and realize, you know what? We have a guy who is pretty much money from the goal line. His name is Roshan Johnson. Like, look at other options and say, yeah, we have other options we could potentially look at. That's all you have to do. You can still be confident in the play call, just maybe show some humility and show some contrition to say, I could have called it at a better point in time.
Yeah, Bill Zimmerman, at Bill T. Zimmerman on Twitter, had a conversation in a podcast, but also tweeted out, I believe it was that Refrigerator Perry had 6 carries. All 6 of them occurred when the Bears were winning. So it's just, situational awareness kind of matters in that. So starting to try to put that game behind and move on to Arizona, something that Dan Wiederer had tweeted out, from what he understands, it will not be a surprise if Tyreek Stevenson does not start Sunday in Arizona. Signs seems to be pointing in that direction. Not necessarily a discussion of what happened in the Commanders game, but more so going forward, right? To me, that reads as just not starting. That could be a series, that could be a quarter, but I mean, he's still going to play.
I think so. I definitely can see them starting Terrell Smith for the first series or two and then moving to Tyreek into position. Or they maybe start flipping and say, you know what, Terrell, you've been out. You played a decent game last week. Let's see what you got, and we'll kind of rotate guys in. I don't think that's the best idea. But he's definitely going to play. The Bears are banged up in their secondary. It's looking like Kyler Gordon's still going to have to miss a week. He's not practicing yet. I understand he's a nickel, but you need all the guys that you can get. I just think this is going to be one of those collegiate suspensions where it's like, okay, you're going to sit on the bench. We're going to show you that you are replaceable, and we have guys who are willing to put in the work. And don't forget, there was kind of a competition last training camp between Terrell Smith and Tyreek Stevenson early on, because both of those guys were shining pretty early at Hallis Hall. So I just think this is going to be a little bit of a reminder that there are guys waiting in the wings that potentially take your job. You're not going to lose it, but kind of a little, wrist slap, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't high school, right, where you're going to get sat because your test grades aren't where they're supposed to be or something like that. At the end of the day, these are professional football players. Every win matters. And I think what the conversations were behind the scenes with the leadership council and what he had to do with his teammates. I mean, I can just picture him standing in front of that auditorium full of his, teammates and having to have that conversation. I mean, that's worse than any, again, slap on the wrist of missing a series or whatever it might be. One last thing in terms of some of the quotes before we move on to our training room roundup, and this really gets us into this next week. Bears defensive coordinator Eric Washington said on Kyler Murray, "You can describe him as a nightmare for opposing defenses." Pretty apropos for Halloween. Do you feel that Kyler Murray still fits that description, that he is a nightmare for opposing defenses, or is there a little less zip to that bite?
I think there's a zip. I think there's levels between a dream, a bad dream, and a nightmare. And I think Kyler Murray probably fits in the bad dream situation where, yeah, it's tough. There's some pretty rough moments, but it's still just maybe not necessarily a nightmare. He played great the last game that he was out on the field against the Dolphins. He's also had a really good game where he had a perfect passer rating earlier in the season. He's still prone to kind of those, goofy mistakes a little bit. He also fumbled. He's been prone to turn it over a few times. He plays a very unique game. And when he's on it, he is on it. He's mobile. He can make something out of nothing. I mean, it's very similar to what we saw with Jaden Daniels. Kyler Murray was kind of doing it before he did. So, yeah, I don't think he has as many of those consistent moments to make it a nightmare. I'll say he can be a bad dream for defenses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I was going to say the exact same thing. When he has a game where he's on, it's you don't want to play against him because the scramble ability, the big play ability, he's going to huck it down the field for sure. He plays without a conscience sometimes when it comes to that. That matters, and he has more weapons around him. We'll dive into all this, but everyone knows Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think Michael Wilson is fantastic, and we can keep going. We'll get into that. But we do have to keep in mind, Call of Duty Black Ops just released too. So I don't know if Kyler is on his game right now.
Well, okay, so it came out last weekend, right?
Yeah, on 25th, I think it was. Is that enough time, though, to really get under his belt?
You know what? What could have happened was he probably got it and said, I'm not going to play yet because there's always bugs with these new games. Let's give it a week. Let's let that figure out. And then now this weekend, I'm really going to get into it. So you could be onto something. Who knows?
All right, training room roundup. And unfortunately, the Bears have a decent amount of stuff on here that we do have to talk about. So some of the big ones, starting from the top, the people that did not participate today or yesterday. We got Karan Amagaji with a calf, Jaquan Brisker concussion, Kyler Gordon hamstring, Braxton Jones knee. From my understanding, Karan actually ended up having to play that game with that calf strain for a while. Like it happened pretty early, and he just kind of thought it was a cramp. So the fact that he was able to still be as if I know right now is a divisive topic with Karan, but he had some good plays in that game that actually make me feel pretty good about his future. It's just the present right now. I mean, he definitely looked like a lost rookie on that one, but he's out. He's not playing.
He settled in actually, which is kind of crazy to hear that he suffered it pretty early. And I think, watching the tape, you can kind of see that he was struggling a bit, but unless he learned how to just sort of manage the pain and just said, okay, I'm going to deal with this and suck it up because there's really no other option right now. I thought as the game went on, he got better and better. So credit to him because that cannot be easy, especially for your first true NFL game as a left tackle. Like that's really, really tough to manage.
So Kyle Gordon also going to be out. There's just no way he's coming back. It sucks because I feel like my job is the bearer of bad news. I said that when he first had the hamstring issue, and people were like, "Oh, there's videos of him traipsing around London. He's fine." It's like it's a hamstring. This is going to be a big thing. Jaquan might play. There's still a chance. I'm not saying it's for sure by any means, but he has a better chance of playing than Kyle Gordon. And then, of course, with Braxton Jones with that knee, more likely than not, he doesn't play. We can kind of lump Tevin Jenkins into that too. Yes, he was technically limited the day before, but that was that whole weird simulated Wednesday. So you had to take that with a grain of salt. The Friday is going to be the big one for those people, but I wouldn't be surprised if you have a brand new left tackle, left guard combo there because the guys you've had there the last couple of games are not going to play.
Man, it's never good to obviously starting one new offensive lineman is one thing. Starting two is very worrisome. And I know you're going to get to Larry Borum, but he might be the next man up at this point, and he hasn't played since August. So what's the rust going to look like there? Does this potentially open the door again for Nate Davis if Tevin Jenkins can't go because Bill Murray was put on IR? So there's a lot of moving and shuffling that can happen. And we'll get into the matchup, but at least it seems like there's better defenses to have this happen to, and then there's worse defenses. And thankfully, it sounds like you can manage, I think, against this Cardinals defense, and we'll get into it at least.
To stay on the offensive line conversation, you mentioned Larry Borum. He was full. People were surprised he wasn't necessarily activated last week, and I was as well. I thought he would have been the next man up, but they chose not to. But I got to imagine that he's brought up this week, be your starting left tackle. The bigger question mark really is Ryan Bates, who dealing with that arthritic shoulder. Yes, he's been limited the last 2 days and hasn't really had a full practice since the summer either. But with his, the veteran aspect that he is, I mean, he's keeping up with his conditioning, all these things, especially with what he's dealing with. You just don't want to put too much wear and tear on it. It wouldn't be surprising if he also ends up coming back and he ends up being your starting left guard, especially if the Bears are truly just done with the Nate Davis scenario. They might just be like, look, we're just that done with Nate Davis. But also at the same time, that's why you don't trade Nate Davis, because that's why you don't see teams trade depth offensive linemen in the season, because things like this happen.
So let me ask you a question then. I know we're still, some of this is guessing. We're trying to figure out, how people are going to look. And I think the rust factor is definitely a concern. Knowing what you know,
mm-hmm.
What's your ideal offensive line combination for Sunday? Realistic combination.
I mean, to be completely honest, it'd probably be Larry Borum at tackle, Matt Pryor left guard. Obviously, you're going to have Coleman Shelton at center. You're going to have Nate Davis at right guard, and then you're going to have Darnell Wright at right tackle. The reason I say that is, and you alluded to this already, to have two question marks on the same side of the line, like just two people that haven't played in a while, that's just a little too many funky factors for me, not even from a health perspective, just from a pure football perspective. And we've already seen this offensive line struggle, it seems like, with knowing where to go and assignments. There were multiple times in that last game where you see them turn back to Caleb just being like, what are we doing? So I don't necessarily want to introduce a second version. At least Nate Davis has been around.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. I think it's not the best combination at all, but at least you know it. 4 of those guys have been in the same position in multiple games. Pryor's had to move over to left guard at times. Nate Davis has started 2 games. He's come in a couple different ones. And Larry Borum, at least, like, he doesn't have familiarity with this particular line, but he's played enough left tackle in his career. And I've always said Larry Borum is the perfect swing tackle. You know what you're going to get from him. It's not the greatest, but at least it's dependable enough. So, yeah, I think that's probably going to have to be the line I'd go with too.
And the thing I like to highlight with people with Nate Davis is, and I was definitely also someone who was like, look, I maybe would rather see what Matt Pryor has back when Davis was starting, is that Davis's issues from play to play weren't that pronounced. I mean, he definitely has the movement skills and the base skill requirement to play in the NFL. It just was the combination of when he missed, it was really, really egregious misses, but there weren't a ton of them. It just, they were at really, really bad times.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he got benched when he did, because yeah, honestly, I can't really add much more to that. I think you said it great. Like, he wasn't as bad. It was just the misses were that much worse. And I think it's probably related to an attitude issue as well. Like, it really seems like this team wants no part of them unless they absolutely have to. Well, they absolutely have to right now. At least that's what it's looking like. So, they're going to have to go back to him. At least they know what they can, what he can depend on, or he can offer, excuse me. But it could be worse. I really do think it could be worse than Nate Davis.
Oh, absolutely. Especially because you still hear other teams are poking around for trading for him, right? I mean, you're not trading for a guy that's an absolute lost cause. So the last thing to really touch on here for the Bears is Montez Sweat, limited participant with a shin. He's going to be pretty much playing every single week. The problem is, since training camp, he's been dealing with just nagging stuff here and there. Some of them are related. Some of them aren't. Some of them are just football things. He did leave last game, obviously, and he couldn't be out there in that final Hail Mary. So that shin was, big enough of a problem that he couldn't finish the game there. So he's going to play. It's just how much impact does he make? He seems like he's, for the most part, continues to make an impact. It's just, how many plays can he really give you in any given week? I thought he'd get better over the bye, really be able to heal up, but unfortunately that wasn't the case.
The bye really didn't come at a great time. It really did. The Bears were rolling. I had an interview with DJ Moore last Tuesday, and we spoke about it. And he said, I was like, "How are you recovering? How's everybody recovering from London?" And he's like, "I'm good. I want to play this week. I wish we played this past week. I wanted to keep the momentum going." And he's just like, "I want the later buys." I think all players would agree to that. And now you're seeing all of these injuries pop up, especially after this past game, and you realize, wow, there's really not a break now. The Bears don't even get like one of those mini buys until the last week of the season, because they're the last Thursday night football game. So this is going to be a really, really, really rough stretch, and God help them so that they could stay healthy, because it's going to keep coming.
Switching over to the Arizona Cardinals. Their stuff is much cleaner. Who'd have thunk it? Darius Robinson is probably the biggest name here that you're going to look at, just in terms of because, at least for me, he was someone that I was relatively high on coming out of the draft. He did not participate, though, the last couple practices, so would not expect him, especially with the calf. Their tackle, Kelvin Beachum, isn't the same player that he used to be necessarily. Limited participant. Jonah Williams, their other tackle, limited both days with the knee. For the most part, the Cardinals are going to be coming into this pretty healthy. Besides the players that are on IR, they have a ton of players on IR.
Quite a few former Bears, too. Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones. This could have been a really, well, I wouldn't say great reunion, but it could have been a Bears reunion. We don't get to see that, unfortunately.
Yeah, apparently the Falcons just couldn't snatch up all of the former Bears. The Cardinals had to do some of it. All right, cool. That is our training room roundup. We're going to do a quick break, and then we'll pop back in.
Proper gut health is instrumental to athletic performance and recovery. Our gut is in essence a second brain, and health researchers are continually uncovering new benefits of probiotics, scientifically connecting the dots between gut health, reduced inflammation, and stronger immunity. Kombucha Aid is a tasty, clean label, functional option to easily add probiotics into any athlete's routine. We call it balancing your brains.
Kombucha is a premium performance-based kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. The revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancement to support hydration and recovery. Made from organic teas and infused with natural electrolytes, Kombucha offers a delicious and effective solution to maintain peak performance. Better athletic performance, increased nutrient absorption, improved wellness, and improved cognitive stamina. All right, we are moving on to our knee-jerk reaction. This is just a hot take we have going into next week. What is yours?
Well, this probably is a pretty popular one. I said it immediately after the Commanders loss in the moment, and I think it still rings true. This game will make or break the season. I don't think that's hyperbole to say. This team's playoff chances hinge on a win. I think Matt Eberflus's coaching future hinge on a win. A lot of jobs, I think, potentially hinge on this win, because you cannot go. Even if you, let's say, lose this game and then beat the Patriots the next week, you're 5-4. That's not a good enough record going into the back half of the season against this division and some of the toughest opponents you're going to play. We know that the Bears have the hardest schedule easily in the NFL from this point on. So a big win, a road win too on a Sunday. I think this would squash up quite a few demons. It would silence a lot of the outside criticism. It might temporarily bring some of the players back and kind of, get them believing again, get the good vibes rolling. And you feel much better about yourselves going into this Patriots game, where you then have a chance to be 6-3 going into the Packers game. So I really do think you're going to be able to, you could probably point to last week being the tipping point, but this really truly is the tipping point for the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point. You easily could see, I mean, at this point on, after any loss, it's going to get incredibly loud regarding the players, or from the players, regarding from fans, what's going to happen with the head coach position. Should he stay? Should he not stay? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I have a question coming up here that I'm going to ask you that kind of leads to this, but it's a very interesting week for the Bears as a whole. My knee-jerk reaction is, I think the Bears have put Caleb in a box, and I think Caleb has let them. I say that because between some conservative throws we're seeing, reduced playground ball that we saw a bit in college, there seems like there's a lot missing from Caleb's game that we saw previously. Right now, he ranks 6th in aggressive throw percent, meaning he's pretty much only throwing to very open receivers, which is great. If you're take Jaden Daniels, for example, not to bring up people's previous scars, but he leads the league in completions to your first read. But as we watch the Bears games, we know that that's not the case. Take a few of the screenplays from last weekend. He opted for the safe option of throwing the ball away over Keenan Allen's head instead of ripping the ball on that screen, which really should have been, a nice chunk gain there. He just feels kind of robotic at times, where he's almost like he's so worried about being a pocket passer, about going through the progressions, about to almost prove, whether it's coaches, whether it's to people outside. It just feels so robotic, which is very different from what we saw in college. So I just want him to relax a little bit, be more willing to be that Caleb Williams at USC. And I'm hoping that it's not just and we hear this even from the coaching staff, right? Eberflus says every series should end in some kind of kick. So that means don't turn the ball over. Is that contributing to some of the deep ball inaccuracies where he's like, well, I don't want to throw an interception, so I'm going to make sure I put a little too much on this. He's overthrowing guys. I just let Caleb play a little bit, just let him be him. That's my thing.
It feels like we're having the same conversation that we had about Justin Fields the last 2 years too, where he is struggling in the pocket. You're talking about coaching. The coaching is too much for him, or he's like, there's too many voices in my head telling me what to do. And he was kind of feeling robotic with it. The difference is Fields just couldn't actually operate within the pocket. We know Caleb can. He's shown it. He's definitely shown not only those flashes, but I think he's had just games where he's operated from the pocket very, very well. This was his worst game since I would say the Tennessee game in terms of just looking flustered, looking out of sorts, rushing things, just not being able to settle down. Like, I mean, when you're missing screen passes high and you're kind of just like, there's a little weird thing in his hitch. I really don't understand like what's going on there, but I think you bring up a really good point where he is trying to protect the ball. He's not trying to put it in harm's way. And that might go back to Eberflus, because what was the mantra that he told Justin Fields? It was like 200 and like 0 or something.
Yeah. I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Basically the gist was, take care of the ball. Don't be stupid with it. Don't make mistakes. And a lot of people at the time were saying, well, you're kind of out, coaching the aggressiveness out of him, and you want him to kind of take chances, because that's how you push the ball downfield. That's how you get big plays. So I'm not as worried about it with Caleb, because I think he possesses a lot of those traits where he can do all of those things. It's just he needs to settle down and just be himself, because we've seen it at a high level where he can do it. So that's a very good point brought up by you. I like that.
So yeah, the Eberflus 200 challenge wanted Fields' box score to read 200, at least 2 touchdowns, either in the air or the ground, plus 0 turnovers and 0 sacks. Talk about conservative,
and you can kind of see it with Caleb Williams a little bit in terms of that.
To be perfectly honest, something brutally honest, I'll go and I'll stay on the same kind of vibe I have. I think the Bears need to stop having Caleb do so much pre-snap. To me, it feels it's really funky when you see all this stuff. He's pointing, he's calling, he's got the mic, he's got this, it's just all this stuff, and then you get a run play for no gain. It's just so much investment. We talked about this a little bit earlier. The offensive line seems confused, where they're looking back while the plays are being called. You're seeing guys just blatantly miss. Like, they'll, in theory, block opposite color, and you'll see Matt Pryor run through the hole and just not touch the safety coming down, and that's the guy that makes the tackle. This isn't a detraction on Caleb, but there's so much that to be done pre-snap conversation and adjustments for often, again, not bring a lot of fruit. So, seems to be that there can just be a can-kill call instead. I mean, it seems like sometimes they have 2 or 3 plays called that he's trying to audible to or get through. Overall, the product has not been consistently good, right? If we were seeing against good teams, against the Texans, against the Commanders, that we, again, more bearing of fruit, then I'd be more about it. But at this point, can we just sometimes line up and run the run? And sometimes can we just line up and have a simple can kill? We have 2 plays, that's it. And maybe that'll help the other guys be in better position.
It's worked at times. I mean, I go back to the Panthers
against
game
the Jaguars and the Panthers. Like, cool.
Exactly. No, I know. I totally get it. Yeah, you're right. It does look a little too much, and I see like maybe it's just the optics of it, but it is funny to see like all the offensive linemen just like look back, like, what are you saying? Like, it just looks like they're all like, they're probably not, but there is some confusion at times. It's just the optics look like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is just way too much. And yeah, there's a lot of just guys missing, a lot of confusion, and it's led to just broken plays too many times. So I can't disagree. Just sometimes you got to keep it simple. I'm not sure if that is Caleb's dissatisfaction with what Shane Waldron is calling, and he's just trying to keep continuing to change out of things, because we know that he has a lot of autonomy at the line to do that. But maybe it just gets down to those two continuing to get on the same page. And now that the Bears are playing upper echelon opponents, that needs to be better, because yeah, you're right, you can get away with it against the Jaguars and against the Panthers.
Yeah, it doesn't need to go to like 0, but like, I don't know, instead of being 100%, just tweak it down a little bit, just a titch. What is your to be perfectly honest?
Well, I had one, and it was just basically just saying the players have collectively moved on from Eberflus. I don't know. We can talk about that later. My other one is just, I really think Keenan Allen's lost a big step, unfortunately. He's still like good enough, but you're just, every time you're watching him, he's getting no separation whatsoever. The good news about Keenan Allen, he doesn't need a lot of yards of separation, because the guy can catch a ball in a phone booth, but that definitely limits you what you can do. I mean, really, he had a couple impactful plays on Sunday, kind of like when he was able to break free on a Caleb scramble. But for the most part, guys are just sticking with him. And some of those like preseason worries, I know JT O'Sullivan was calling it out like 13. What are you doing? You're just not moving well. You're dogging it. I don't know if he's dogging it. I just don't know if he has it. Like, everybody loses a step at some point, and I think we've finally found the point where Keenan Allen's done it. He has not broken 50 yards yet this season. For Keenan Allen, like a future Hall of Famer potentially, and he's not that old, but I don't know. It just really feels like this is the year Father Time's catching up with him. He's still going to make an impact. We've of course seen that in certain situations against certain defenses, but I'm officially waving the white flag that we are going to see this massive Keenan Allen breakout game for like 120 yards. I don't think it's coming.
Yeah, and I'll take that one step further. I just need to see him, instead of the reads being to him, instead of being the routes to him being that emphasis, I need to go Rome more, right? I need Rome to be that sometimes first read, but at least the second read. I need him to run some of those routes because he can get the separation. I need Cole Kmet. He had 1 target and 1 reception last game. That's ridiculous for a guy who in one game this season, I think when he had like 9 catches on 10 targets, something like that.
And on National Tight End Day, it was his holiday.
And you treat him so horribly. It makes no sense. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, ain't this humorous? Something a little quirky or funny that going into this week. What do you got?
Well, it got a little traction when I tweeted it out, but one streak, unless there's a tie, is going to end. So the Bears are 3-0 in State Farm Stadium ever since it was built. The year it was built, or at least it was opened, was 2006. And I think we all know what happened the first time the Bears played there. They also won in 2012, and then they also won in 2018. Another come-from-behind game where the offense didn't look great. Seems like a pattern there, so hopefully the Bears can change that. But they are undefeated in that stadium, so that streak is going against Matt Eberflus's 0-17 in true road games on a Sunday. Brad Biggs, I think, was the first one who tweeted this out. The only Bears road wins since 2021, the day after Christmas, when Nick Foles beat the Seahawks, have come on Mondays and Thursdays. So that's a big problem. I don't know what is going on with the Bears and the road trips on Sundays, but Matt Eberflus is 0-17. So one of those streaks will end Sunday, and let's pray to God it is the second one.
That's crazy. I don't know how you don't even like accident into a road win. Like when your team isn't horrendous. I mean, that obviously he hasn't had the best team around him, but like, come on, especially with how their home record is.
Yeah, they can't lose at home and they can't win on the road. Like, oh man. And then what does that lead to? It leads to pretty much like a 9-8, 8-9 season.
The definition of mid. Mine is about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray ranks 10th in average completed air yards. He ranks 6th in average air yards differential. So basically, average air yards differential is calculated by subtracting the passer's average intended air yards from his average completed air yards. The stat indicates if he is on average attempting deep passes that he on average completes. This is a long way and complicated way of saying Kyler is still Kyler, and he's going to big game hunt, and he's going to do it pretty well. It's one of those, hey, Kyler, don't ever change. he's just going to run around and just chuck it deep, especially now that, he actually has a better offensive coordinator and some actual receivers to catch the ball. All right, another break here, and then we're going to dive into some even more specifics on this game. We got that dog in us. Underdog is a place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I have used multiple sites and apps to enhance my game day, and Underdog is quite unique with their experience. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, they will rescue your entry. Define vulture as a rushing touchdown scored by a player not designed as a running back. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if any early injury causes your entry to lose. With Underdog's double flex option, you can even take 2 L's and still have your entry be a win. This season, Underdog is going to be running a special promo or bonus almost every single day, like Profit Boost. Pump up your winnings in just a tap when you apply the boost to eligible entries. Discounts. You'll get adjusted projections on certain players' stats to give you a better shot at a big W, or free picks. They're basically a sure thing. A player just has to get higher than 0.5 passing yards for that selection to win. Plus, all new users get a free pick'em. Download the app today and use code CITY, C-I-T-Y, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every hair-raising touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 3342. New York, call the 34/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Underdog, pretty cool. All right. What do you need to know? This is just kind of a general thing where we throw some interesting tidbits at you. I ask whoever is hosting with me today, we got Brendan, of course. Couple questions. So, Chicago Bears and the Arizona Cardinals have the oldest rivalry in the NFL. The two teams are the only two remaining from the league's founding in 1920, when the Bears were called the Decatur Staleys and the Cardinals were the Racine Cardinals. And the rivalry is known as the Battle of Chicago because both teams moved to Chicago in 1922. The Bears-Cardinals rivalry has been played 93 times, with the Bears winning 58 games and the Cardinals winning 29, and there's 6 ties. Caleb Williams, with a win at Arizona, would become the second quarterback selected number 1 overall in the NFL draft to win 5 of his first 8 career starts, joining Andrew Luck. So, first of the questions I got for you, is this a must-win for the Bears?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything I just talked about before, I think it really does make or break the season. I mean, I don't need to rehash it. And especially, like, even if the Bears just, I don't want to say just lost, but I mean, like, it was a different loss last week against the Commanders, but in the way that the coaching mistakes and everything was amplified from that Hail Mary, the national attention that it got, it even just like makes it even more of a priority. Like, this team has to get back on track, not only for the playoff push, but just for a lot of people's jobs and to kind of quell some of the criticism, because my God, if they lose, and if, let's say, like, it's kind of a bad loss too, things are going to start, heads might have to roll. Maybe not firings or anything like that, but you can kind of start to see where the season's going after this. They need to get back on track. And the Cardinals are a pretty good team. Like, they're scrappy, they're feisty, they're pulling out some pretty close games. So this is not going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more I can add to that. I would agree with you. This, just in terms of simply the narrative of you cannot lose this game. And then when you look at what's ahead of you, the daunting, one of the most difficult schedules remaining. All right, what do you trust more? The Bears' offense to score points or the Cardinals' defense to stop teams from scoring?
Ooh. I guess in this standpoint, I might say the Bears, because the Cardinals defense, they don't have a good defense. They really don't. They're one of the few in the bottom 10 of the league in terms of total yards, passing yards. They're giving up a lot of yards on the ground. The last couple of weeks they've been better, but even against their win against the Chargers, it was essentially like the Bears defense, where they gave up a lot of runs. They just finally clamped down in the red zone. But the Dolphins scored early on them last week. I think I still think, like, even though they're winning games, I think the Bears offense is more than capable of putting up points against them. Last week they finally got going. Hopefully they can use that momentum at the end of the game to kind of propel them, because we know how bad they start. They have not led in a game to start the game. Like, every team has scored first. So I think I do still trust the Bears' offense to do more than the Cardinals' defense. And that's not necessarily a glowing endorsement of the Bears' offense. It's just everything you see with the Cardinals' defense, plus injuries. Like, they've lost quite a few key playmakers. Dennis Gardeck, who led the team in sacks before he got hurt, he's out. We already talked about the injuries earlier on the defensive line. So, yeah, I feel better about the Bears' offense doing something.
Yeah, the Bears offense ranks 25th in offensive DVOA, which isn't great. But on the other hand, the Arizona defense allows the 9th most points by any defensive team per game. They rank 26th in defensive DVOA. The Cardinals have the 3rd worst pressure rate in the league and also just can't stop the run. So I would have to agree with you that, I mean, we've at least seen, not early in games, but we've at least seen the Bears offense can generate points at times. It's just a matter of how quickly and how consistently. Another question for you. Has Marvin Harrison been disappointing, awesome, or somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between. He's been awesome at times, no doubt, but he's been very, I guess, volatile in terms of just what his production is. I mean, he'll go out, he'll have like 20 yards a game, and then next thing you know, he's getting 116 yards and a touchdown. He was amazing against the Rams earlier in the season. But you know what? This is kind of what to expect from rookie wide receivers in general. I think sometimes we get spoiled with guys like Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. But if you go back like 10 years, this is kind of what you expect from rookies, especially early on for the first half of the season. We'll see if he can kind of turn it on at the end, the back half. But I think it's just, one of those things where he's been awesome at times. He can be awesome. And the other thing too is I think some of the other Cardinals players have really stepped up on that offense. Trey McBride, you mentioned Michael Wilson before as well. This offense is starting to become more well-rounded, and there's no doubt that, at least I don't think there's any doubt that Harrison is going to become, one of the best wide receivers in the league at some point. But I think it's okay that he's sort of, had some of those moments but he's also struggled as he gets over that rookie wall.
Yeah, so just for some context, Marvin Harrison currently ranks 25th overall in receiving yards, 4th amongst rookies. Brock Bowers is 2nd, so tight end slipped in there. Rome is ranked 7th amongst rookies, battling obviously for targets with Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, and DJ Moore. And Marvin Harrison is ranked, it's tied for 4th in touchdowns overall. So totally agree, right there somewhere in the middle. I thought he'd be a little more impactful. Just watching his film in college, I thought he'd be more of a slide right in and do a little bit more, but that's not saying, I mean, he's still doing great. There's no problem there.
Well, and the other thing about that real quickly before we get into it, you're right. I thought he was going to kind of slide in with what DeAndre Hopkins did, because it's just the body types go up and get it kind of type, and Kyler was going to rely on him. I think it's also, like I said, just Kyler looking at other guys and not relying too much on him, which is growth for Kyler, which I think is good for the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's how an offense should operate, right? This is our love it, hate it, rehabilitate it matchup or specific dynamic you love for the Bears, one you hate for the Bears, and one that if you were the coach, you would have focused on fixing this week. What is your love?
Well, this is good timing after we talked about the Arizona defense, but I love Caleb Williams versus Arizona's pass defense. I mean, they've allowed 245.6 yards per game. That's one of the worst in the league. They're also allowing a 101.4 opposing passer rating, which is one of the worst. I think it's like 4th or 5th. Two of the worst teams, the bottom two, are the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers. And we all saw what Caleb Williams did against those teams. He had over 120 rating against them. So I'm not sure if Caleb's going to throw for like 350 yards or anything, but I could definitely see another efficient game, kind of like what he did against the Jaguars, where he had 200 plus yards and multiple touchdowns against them. You mentioned it. They don't generate any sort of pass rush. I don't think their corners are that great. I think Budda Baker is severely overrated. And I do like this Bears offensive skill group to be able to do some damage against them. And I kind of, maybe I'm putting too much stock into it, but I like that Shane Waldron has familiarity as well with this team. The same coaching staff from last year with when he was with the Seahawks. So I'm hopeful that he's able to, conjure up something where Caleb's able to go off.
That's a really good point. I like the Shane Waldron angle there. Great minds think alike. My love is just the opportunity I love for the Bears offense to get back on track after it was funky last week. We previously discussed the numbers for the Cardinals' bad defense. They have struggled at all three levels. Corners Max Melton playing because starter Murphy Bunting's on IR and Sterling Thomas have 45 and 56 PFF grades respectively. The D line's not much better with LJ Collier, Tonga, and Dante Stills all receiving 46.3, 62.8, and 59.1 grades respectively. Julian Aquara with their outside linebacker has just been bad. The team we talked about injuries. Darius Robinson, Murphy Bunting, Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones, and BJ Ojulari have all been out. They just really, a team that they basically tried to throw a lot of free agency money at to patch that defense together, that was already not great, is just now Swiss cheese. Hate it. I'll dive right into this. Mine's pretty simple. This is nothing really about the Cardinals coaching, to be honest, but I just hate the Bears coaching staff right now against other coaching staffs. I just hate it. I think when you are the culture defense guy and your defense is doing fine, great, but you have your leadership council that's speaking out and how bad that is when your hand-picked offensive coordinator, when you had the number one pick, so anyone that was available wanted that job, and you're struggling as mightily as you are on offense to consistently generate offense, when you have Chris Morgan as a holdover for some reason and your offensive line is this bad, you can just go on and on in terms of what this, especially the offensive side coaching staff, and then just the decision making. Every single week, there's a play that we're like, why did you challenge that? Or why didn't you challenge this other one? Like the entire, whoever's up in the booth, who's in charge of calling down a Flus, being like, you need to, challenge this or not, that whole booth needs to get fired. Like, they are terrible. So like just everything this coaching staff is currently doing, I just hate, and I'm concerned as they go against pretty much any coaching staff going forward.
Are we sure there's anybody in the booth? Like, are we sure there's actually somebody up there? Because I have my doubts.
It could just be Flus's daughters chilling up there. I have no idea.
His barber.
What is your hate?
My hate is Trey McBride versus the Bears pass defense, particularly the linebackers and the nickel corner. Yeah. So Evan Ingram 3 weeks ago went off against the Bears in his return when he was with the Jaguars and went for over 100 yards. This past game, Zach Ertz had 7 catches for 77 yards. One of them may not have been a catch, but hey, Flus didn't challenge, like you said. So I really like tight ends are eating up this team right now, and considering how much that the Cardinals rely on him, I think he is. I don't have it up right now, but I think he's second in receiving yards, or maybe first. He is, for the Cardinals at least. He's a key cog for them. He's coming off a 100-yard game against the Dolphins, and especially without Kyler Gordon, like he is an X factor for that defense. They just can't do as much without him. And no disrespect to Josh Blackwell, I think he's a really good reserve, but there's just limits there. So I'm afraid that Trey McBride could be the one to go off against the Bears on Sunday.
Yeah, that is a really good one. His name will come up again later in the show. Don't you worry. So my rehabilitate, bolster the pass protection. Caleb Williams was pressured on 51.6% of his dropbacks last game and had just a 2.47 second time to pressure average. It was the highest pressure percentage and quickest time to pressure he's faced this season. You need to start putting on film that you can handle the blitz. Otherwise, teams going forward, I'm looking at you, Minnesota Vikings, they are going to make your life miserable. So by that, I mean the running backs need to be better at picking up pass rushers. Roschon Johnson, who's normally pretty good, got just stonewalled at one point. DeAndre Swift, who is usually not very good, continued to not be very good for his pass rushing. And also schematically, there was that one play where the Bears were backed up. Caleb is throwing from his own end zone, and you have both Swift and Mercedes Lewis go out on routes, and your left tackle gives up pressure because he's, has barely played any football, and we found out is playing with the calf strain. Why would you not have chip help there? I don't get it. Like, it makes the designs are just so limiting in terms of what you can do. And Shane Waldron continues to just put so much on Caleb's plate. You compare that to Jaden Daniels, there's so many easy buttons, like whether it's the screens, whether it's the first read just being schemed open. Like, nope, Terry McLaurin's great. Zach Ertz is old, but still good. and you can go down the list of the receiving options they have for the Commanders. They're not all stars on that team, but they're getting open because of what Cliff Kingsbury is doing behind the scenes. Can we just get a little bit of that to give Caleb a little bit more time so he's not running for his life?
Well, and on top of that, like we saw a couple of them, but more design boots. Like he is so good on the run, and sometimes it happens just by happenstance because of pressure bearing down on him. But look, we in the year of our Lord 2024, don't run Mercedes Lewis on routes. Seriously, he is an extra blocker. He's a good extra blocker. Yeah, like that time has passed, and especially when you do have injuries on the offensive line, just let him be that extra help and give the quarterback time, because we have seen time and time again when Caleb does have time, he can pick apart defenses. So yeah, that's a really good point. My rehab is I didn't really know how to say this, so I just said Shane Waldron rewriting the script and just actually maybe pulling a George Costanza where he's like, you know what, I'm gonna do the opposite of what I would normally do, because it is abundantly clear that this game script does not work. Whether it's a mix of guys not executing or just poor play calls, it's usually somewhere in the middle. But regardless, it is not working with this group of guys. And you cannot pretty much just sleepwalk through the first quarter anymore now that you are playing against good teams. It worked before against the Panthers. It worked against the Jaguars. But my goodness, we cannot have another just 3-and-out series where the Bears just cannot generate anything. So whatever game script that Shane Waldron has cooked up, rewrite it, throw it in the trash, do the exact opposite of what you were thinking, and maybe some things happen. Like these two need to go to rehab together and get it figured out, because it just continues to not work. I mean, the Bears cannot, like I said, they just cannot fall behind again to another team. Like it's happened every single game this season. For once, they need to score first.
And I think that's going to go a long way. Something that I noticed, I was going back and watching the All-22, and I believe it was in the third quarter. I'd have to double check. But there's a play where DJ Moore is doing a crosser. Caleb Williams drops back, pressure in his face pretty much immediately. He has to scramble to the left, and he ends up scrambling for like a 1-yard gain or something like that. During the scramble, though, you see DJ Moore throw his arms down, do this weird little I'm mad shimmy, and then walk up the field in the trajectory where he should be running. I say this I say this to bring up two things. A, first and foremost, DJ Moore, you're a wide receiver one, you're being paid like one. Don't be pouting. This connects to some of the previous body language stuff that everyone wants to kind of throw poo-poo away. I think he is getting actually frustrated, and he shouldn't. He has some right to be, but first of all, you're wide receiver one. Don't do that. Act like an adult. Number two, if Shane Waldron did a better job with that initial game script and there was a little more consistency and a little more positivity in the early stages of the game, those frustrations would be less likely to show, right? So I think to what you're saying, you got to make this a little easier on your team to be able to mentally get through.
Yeah, it is interesting though, because of how many times that Justin Fields would take off and run. And look, as I haven't played, at the highest level or anything. I was in a competitive flag football league in my 20s. But we had a quarterback who was kind of like Justin Fields. He had a, strong arm, but he loved to take off and run, and he ran from clean pockets sometimes. And I would be 15 yards, 20 yards downfield and look back and be like, oh crap, I got a block. That does kind of get annoying. Like, especially when you're expecting passes and things just don't go that way. So like to an extent, I get DJ's frustration. I'm only comparing just how you felt when you're expecting a pass, when you see a quarterback run. But I guess I'm surprised that we didn't necessarily see it last year versus with Fields. And now we're seeing it a little bit more with Caleb when he doesn't run as much. And he is a quarterback that does want to throw first. So maybe that does, like you said,
Caleb scrambles to throw.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just kind of weird to see like DJ have that frustration when you knew Fields wasn't going to actually throw it when he's on the run where Caleb would. So I don't know, just interesting dynamics, I would say.
It is. All right. Last break. And then we get to the back half of our show, back third of our show, really. All right. X Factor for the Cardinals. I told you he'd be back. Trey McBride. They just got to get him involved early and often. He set the season high in targets, 11, receptions, 9, and receiving yards, 124, and yards after catch, 46 in Sunday's win last week. McBride gained a majority of his receiving yards against linebacker David Long in coverage, 5 receptions for 68 yards on 5 targets against him. You mentioned earlier the woes the Bears have had at times covering tight ends. So, if the Cardinals can continue to unleash McBride, it's a recipe for a win for them.
My X factor, I'm going to go twofer here because I think they both go hand in hand. But Kyler Murray is the X factor. We talked about how he could be a little Jekyll and Hyde, where he's really good, potentially really bad. Coming off one of his best games of the season, I'd say his second best game of the season. And it's also essentially like not a carbon copy, but very similar to what they played against Jaden Daniels, somebody who's mobile, somebody who, can throw the ball downfield. And somebody who can just make something out of nothing. How many times do we see that with TJ Edwards trying to chase him? So that's going to be a very similar experience on Sunday with Kyler Murray. And then along with that is the Cardinals offensive line, where they have not allowed a sack in 3 straight games. They're the only team in that time frame to not allow a sack. Paris Johnson Jr. is playing really well. I know they're banged up a little bit on the line, but they are able to keep the pocket clean now. And so the Bears have got to break that streak. They got to get after Kyler Murray. We know that he's slippery. We know that he can evade sacks like pretty much none other. But with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offensive line, that is going to be the X factor. You have to get after him. You have to bring him down. And you got to force him into mistakes because we know he's capable of making them.
Wow, that offensive line set's incredibly annoying. What is your X factor for the Bears?
Oh, man. He's been my X factor for the season. I kind of called it in the preseason with my guy, Joey Christopoulos. It is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift incredibly has now become the most consistent player on offense after he just was garbage for the first 3 weeks. He has 4 straight games with 100-plus yards from scrimmage. His 129 rushing yards last week were the most since week 2 of the 2023 season. And he didn't even catch a pass last week, which is incredible because he's so good at that. And that's kind of where he's really, he is. So I don't understand why that is or why they didn't do that. Just goes to show the game plan last week was so flawed. So continue to get DeAndre Swift involved, throw him the damn ball because he's more than capable of getting past those edge rushers. He's the guy who is the most consistent player on offense right now. And I am officially dubbing him the Bears version of Dexter Fowler from the Chicago Cubs World Series team, where Joe Madden used to call him "You go, we go." Well, if DeAndre Swift goes, the Bears go. So I am definitely, calling him my X factor. And he's probably going to be my X factor in many, many other games too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mine for the Bears is the defense. Keep the game easy for your offense. We've seen that mostly throughout this year. Even last week, right? They held the Commanders to 12 points, which should have been enough. Well, 12 points before the Hail Mary. But, per Kevin Fishbane, some Bears defensive ranks in the red zone, they're ranked first. Goal to go, they're ranked second. Third down, they're ranked sixth. Success percent, which is via True Media, they're first. And defensive EPA per snap, they are third. So they really have to keep that up to keep the game manageable right now for their offense as they continue to try to find their footing and find their consistency. Over-unders. So this is where I just throw some over-unders at you, and you let me know where you fall. So first one is a pick'em. Passing yards, Kyler or Caleb?
Ooh. That's a good one. I'm going to say Kyler just because I don't know. I like James Conner, and his home road splits, by the way, are really, really good. He is awesome at home. He sucks on the road, so that's bad for the Bears. But I just feel like Kyler's going to be throwing it a lot more. I think they're going to, like I said, get Trey McBride involved. And I just think that DeAndre Swift's going to get a lot more run, no pun intended, where they're going to take the load off Caleb. He's still going to have a big game, I think. Like I said, in terms of, hopefully touchdowns and, playing efficient football, I just don't know. I think Kyler Murray's going to throw more yards though.
Let's go turnovers by Caleb Williams, over under 0.5.
Under.
He's been playing pretty mistake-free football.
He has, and the Cardinals defense they don't get takeaways. They're I think at the bottom half of the league in that. He's been very, very good about not doing that. And really, I don't think I'm trying to think of some of the throws from Sunday. A ton of them weren't necessarily in harm's way. Either he was just overthrowing guys or just completely missing him. But I mean, I don't remember seeing ones that were like about to get picked off. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think he plays a mistake-free game at least.
And that goes back to kind of the point that was brought up earlier, right? Where it seems like he's, especially after some of those higher interception games, that he's almost taking care of the ball to a fault, where it's like, you have the arm talent. You could probably throw it into some tighter windows if you really want to. You just kind of talked about him. Rushing yards for DeAndre Swift, over under 65.5.
Over. Let's go. Let's feed him. I mean, come on. Just I don't need to say anymore. Feed him. I think he's going to go off again.
Receiving yards for Trey McBride, 54.5.
Over, unfortunately. Like I said, everything I mentioned, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, the fact that he's a big focal point in this offense, I think he's going to have another pretty solid game.
Targets for Cole Kmet, 5.
Internet's a little choppy, but I think you
said targets for Cole Kmet, 5.5.
Yep. Okay, I got it. Oh God, that one's tough, man.
Yeah, it is.
I think I'm gonna go under. Unfortunately, it should be over, but I'm gonna go under. I think he's obviously gonna get more. But also you got to think about like Cole Kmet. When he gets targeted, he catches the ball. Like he's only missed 3 passes all season long. So if you think he's gonna have like a 4 reception game, he's probably getting 4 targets. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go under.
I mean, and there seems to be some overcorrection every single time, right? We talked about like week 1, he got nothing because for some reason Gerald Everett was in the game a ton, and then the next week he had all of the targets and snaps. So I would expect there to be that same overcorrection. Last one. This one's a little weird. Point differential at the end of the first quarter, 4.5.
Ooh, and that goes either way, right?
Either way.
That's tough. I'm gonna go under. I do think I think the Bears have been so good in the 2-minute. Not last week, but the few weeks prior, where they've been able to get something going. So depending on how it goes, I think they could lead another like 1-minute drive to get a touchdown to either cut the deficit or take the lead, but I don't think it's going to be a large lead. I think this is going to be a tight game all the way around. So I don't want to say it's going to be any more than 5 points.
I can see that. All right. Bear gut check. We use our gut feelings, revitalized by kombucha, of course, to give our game predictions against the line. 3:05 p.m. Bears at Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals favored by 1. I've seen a couple lines where the Bears are favored by 1. It's kind of wherever you go to. Who you got?
Oh man, it's 1. The last I checked, it was 1.5. Damn, that's tough. Screw it. I'll take Bears +1. It's essentially a pick 'em.
It's a pick 'em at that point.
I know. I am worried that the Bears very well could lose this game. And I'm kind of leaning that way. That's why I was thinking +1.5. I could see them losing like 24-23, just because that's what the Cardinals have done. But yeah, I really think like this is a weird Cardinals team where they just fight back and they're able to kind of stay in it all the way for the last few weeks. There have been some blowouts. There have been some blowouts, so we'll see. But I still say Bears +1, +1.5, depending on where you're.
And I'll give the disclaimer too for people. I grabbed these yesterday afternoon, so the line's probably changed. So keep that in mind if you're using this for betting purposes for some reason. I don't know why you'd use us for that, but more power to you. Thursday night football: Houston Texans at the New York Jets. Again, when I grabbed this, the Jets were favored by 1.5 points.
Oh God. I had the Texans, man. I had the Texans the whole time. And I just keep seeing all of this BS about the Jets wearing the black uniforms. Aaron Rodgers is so good on Thursday night. There's so many little weird things. And I'm like, Mason, I'm telling you, dude, I've been burned by the Jets all season long. I do, whether it's betting, whether it's my pick'ems. I've lost 2 weeks now because I've switched my pick at the very last minute from one team to the Jets, and it's cost me dearly.
Costanza.
Yeah. So I switched again. I was going to take the Texans, and now I'm on the Jets. So screw it, Jets. You know what? I can't stop eating the trash, man. I really can't.
I think I'm gonna take the Texans plus 1.5 here. I know they're down Nico Collins. I know they're down Stephon Diggs. I know they haven't necessarily playing their best football in the world, but there's nothing about the Jets that makes me think that they will do anything. Like they've done nothing this year to make me believe in them at all.
I know, man. Like I keep falling for it. I don't know what's going on. Like I just keep seeing stuff. The Jets are the team, man. I am so easily influenced by because I just keep thinking, well, Aaron Rodgers hurt me before. He can turn it on at any point, and this is a really weird line. Where
he's wearing a different shade of green. He can't hurt you anymore.
I know, but he is hurting me. He's hurting me in my pocketbook because I should be up like a few $100s at least with him, and I'm not.
Oh,
hate him.
Looking ahead, Bears will be playing the Patriots, but this week they're playing the Titans. And the Titans are favored by 3.5. Who would you take there?
We don't know who's starting for quarterback for the Patriots yet. I think Drake May was still. I think he was
still limited.
Okay. You know what? I'm gonna take. You said the Titans were favored 3.5.
Yeah.
I'll take the Patriots. That's a big win to get over the Jets. And I think they're starting to play a little bit more together under Gerard Mayo. The Titans, man, they're in free fall after this. After that Lions game, that was really rough.
I think I'd go Patriots as well. Yes, their offense actually got a little better moving DeAndre Hopkins out of there, just because one, you have Mason Rudolph, who is just better at quarterback than Will Levis is right now, and also I think the offense became more obvious, where it's like, okay, throw it to Calvin Ridley. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And their defense is good. They're holding, but they also are moving pieces off their defense. I don't know, but all that being said, the Patriots have the momentum, and if Drake May plays, that's a big if for me too. I would go ahead and take the Patriots because he just has that. He's bringing some energy to that team. Shifting to the NFC North, Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. The Lions are favored by 3.5.
Huge game. And as just, looking back, if you're just an objective football fan, this is going to be a really fun game. That's going to be fun to watch.
Potentially without Jordan Love.
Potentially without Jordan Love, right. So that's the thing. And Jared Goff he did miss practice yesterday. He was a full participant today on Thursday. So I still think like the Lions are a juggernaut. The Packers have been like, credit to them for finding ways to win at the very last second of these last 2 weeks. But that was against a relatively bad Jaguars team and a Texas team that has underperformed. The Lions, you could argue, are the best team at football right now, even without Aiden Hutchinson. So really good game. I'll take the Lions for that one.
I think that's easy. Lions for sure, especially with the QB question. I mean, Matt LaFleur is a mad scientist back there for figuring out how to win with Malik Willis and all that. But the Lions team is also just like good. So lastly, Sunday Night Football, the Indianapolis Colts led by Joe Flacco, as Anthony Richardson has been sat at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are favored by 5.5. Pretty moderately hefty line there. Who do you got?
That is hefty. Look, the Vikings, I don't know what they were doing last Thursday night, just not setting pressure against Matthew Stafford, which is very weird. Brian Flores, that's not his moniker, so I don't know what was going on there. They did trade for Cam Robinson to kind of fill their left tackle position. He's been good, but he's obviously not Christian Darrisaw. And I remember watching that game where as soon as he went out, the left side was crumbling with Sam Darnold. Yeah. The Colts defense is not good. But I do think there's belief in Joe Flacco, and maybe I'm just kind of buying into the hype that was from last year with the Browns. But I think that now this is his team going into it. I think he's going to do okay. He's seen a bunch of defenses. It's going to be a close game, so I'm okay giving the points to the Colts. 5.5, that's a big number.
I'm going to take the backdoor cover for the Colts. Like, Joe Flacco is a professional football quarterback. Like that's just how he rolls. There's enough skill position there between Downs, between Andy Mitchell, that and Jonathan Taylor at running back, of course. And they still have a good offensive line, for the Colts too. So they should be able to move the ball, even if they can't necessarily stop the Vikings. So I think that they should be in the game. And like you just said, 5.5's a kind of big number. I don't like playing with that. I probably just wouldn't bet on this, to be honest. A coccyx and bull story. Some bold predictions. What do you have? What's your bold prediction for this game as we wrap the show up?
All right, this is a preview for my bold predictions for the weekend that I do every week for Bears Wire. People are not going to like this. I think Doug Kramer gets the handoff again.
Shane Waldron just gives the middle finger and says, "I'm going to do what I want."
I think he's going to do it. I think it's going to come at a more opportune time. And you know what? Why? Screw it. Why not? Like, we clearly saw the worst thing that's going to happen, so it can't get worse than that unless
only up from here.
A touchdown. Yeah. So why not? I'm going to say Shane Waldron says, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm going to call it again. It's that goofy meme. Like, I'll effing do it again. Yeah. So look, real talk. Like, he does believe in it. He's been featured more and more as the weeks have gone on. And I really do. And part of me really thinks that, like, a coach and both Eberflus and Shane Waldron are protecting Kramer. Like, they don't want to just say, well, yeah, like, why would we give it to an offensive lineman? This guy sucks. So I could definitely see them calling it earlier as just kind of a, hey, see, we can do it. And also just, get off my case, because this can work at times. So yeah, that's my bold prediction.
I can't say enough how much I love that bold prediction. Mine, I'll say Caleb Williams throws for over 300 yards again. That's how little also I think of this Cardinals defense. I just think they're that horrendous. And Caleb is just the gamer type. He knows how bad he played in those first three quarters in the last game. And he clearly has the ability to, at the minimum, take advantage of bad defenses. And this is a bad defense. Not trying to put down Caleb by saying that, because we just haven't had an opportunity to see him really play against too many good defenses either. So yeah, Caleb over 300 yards passing. Offensive player of the game. I'm going to just remove Caleb from this, because if he throws for over 300 yards, he would probably be offensive player of the game. So I'm going to also add in my sneaky Cole Kmetness here, that he does what I think he should and gets about like 7 catches in this game, racks up, just over the century mark with that. Who do you got?
That's totally fair. I'm going to take DeAndre Swift then. I think everything I just said, he's on such a hot streak right now. They know that they can get success feeding him. I mean, he had 18 carries last week. I would hope that you continue to get him 15 plus carries. And yeah, I think especially run him on the right side, for God's sake, especially with how that left side could look. We know that Darnell Wright is a pretty good run blocker. So yeah, I think he's going to be the offensive player.
Incoming Khalil Herbert game. We have defensive player of the game. Who do you have for that one?
All right. I think this is going to be a Jalen Johnson game. I think that he is going to lock up Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm very excited for this matchup. I know Jalen doesn't necessarily follow guys around anymore. We'll see if that changes, though, too. If we're thinking that Tyreek Stevenson gets benched at least temporarily, maybe Jalen Johnson starts to follow MHJ, and I think he is going to just lock it down. He wasn't targeted much. Yeah, we'll see what Trey McBride does in the middle. I know we talked about the concerns there. I really want to see this matchup, and I think Jalen Johnson wins.
I'm going to also stick in the secondary, because I think if there's going to be some pretty big impact, it'll be more there than the offensive line, with Kyle Murray's escapability, and they have a solid offensive line. It's not amazing, but it's solid. I don't think you're getting too much going on the pass rush there. So I'm going to go with Kevin Byard, that he gets a couple of bombs that Murray throws up there, and he's able to slide in a couple pass breakups and an interception. Go Kevin.
Yeah.
And wrap it up. King of North, aka MVP. DeAndre Swift for you?
No, well, it could be, but I'm going to go off the board here, and I'm going to say all of the Bears fans who are traveling to Arizona to make this a home game. I think it's very clear that there's going to be a lot of Bears fans in attendance. They usually travel pretty well to Arizona. It already seems like there's going to be a ton of fans, like just hearing who's going and all of that. So I think they're going to turn this into a pseudo Bears home game, and maybe that leads to a win. There were a lot of fans in Washington too. It was a close game, but yeah, I think the Bears fans are going to bring it out and take over that place. I mean, look, Mason, we saw the Chargers of all people had a ton of fans there for that Monday night game that nobody saw on ESPN+.
They have no fans. They don't exist. They're not real.
But apparently they do because they were in Arizona. So a lot of Bears transplants are there. I think they're going to really show up and show out, and we'll hear some "Let's Go Bears" chants, and that to me, that makes them the MVP of the game.
I think that's a really good one, especially just how important it is to have the vibe on your side in a game like this, coming off the week that the Bears are coming off of. So I think that's an awesome choice. I'm going to cop out. I'm just going to go with Cole Kmet. I just think he's going to be that steady force this game that, hey, it's 3rd and 4 where we need a conversion here. Boom. Hey, it's where you're on the goal line. We need a touchdown. Maybe you're on the 4, so you don't, just hand it to Roshan. You're going to see them leak him out and for a touchdown. It just seems like I said this already, the overcorrection where he was barely involved last game. And now it's like, oh yeah, we forgot. We have this actually, top 5 production kind of tight end that we should probably get the ball to. So I'll stick with him. All right. That is the show we have. Thank you so much for coming in today. Pinch hitting on short notice. Both Danny and Kyrie couldn't be here today because of stupid Halloween and their families, heaven forbid. But yeah, awesome. You did amazing job as always. And I could be happier with having you in here.
No, Mason, thank you so much, man. I'm always happy to answer the call. It's always good talking ball with you. And yeah, as a childless 30-year-old, who just has a dog that just barks every time the doorbell rings. I don't know if you heard that, but she's going nuts half the time for the episode, just because we got so many trick-or-treaters. No, it's my pleasure. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and make sure, again, plug your stuff. People need to go follow him. If you're watching live, his name's been scrolling across the bottom. And just where can they find all your awesome content?
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you call it, at Brendan Sugrue. That's Sugrue. Make sure you check out my work at bearswire.com. Ton of great stuff coming out, not only for myself, but all of our writers. We'll definitely have the pulse for you. And then check out the Bear Down Chicago podcast. We go live every Sunday night after the Bears game. And it'll be myself, Ryan Dangle, Patrick Sheldon, Jack Wright, Logan Bradley, Cam Ellis, some sort of combination of those guys will be with you on Sunday nights. So again, Mason, dude, awesome talking with you. Thank you again. And hopefully the next time we talk, it's after a win, because after talking about the Jaguars game, that was a lot of fun. It's never fun talking after these hard weeks. So let's hope the Bears get a win this week.
Oh man, yeah. After that last game, when I did the post game pod with Kyle, Sco on Twitter, starts Kyle Orton, and it was a rough hour conversation to say the least. Yeah, make sure you check out that post game show, Wear and Tear, a Bears podcast. It goes pretty much within 10-ish minutes after the game ends. Not sure who's going to be popping on. Still trying to figure that out for this week in particular, because it's a weird 3:05 times by the time the game ends, yada, yada, family stuff, dinner stuff. It's hard to figure out, but we will have that show for you. Yeah, that's all we got for you, Bears Nation. Bear down.